He was born Flavius Petrus Sabatius, the son of peasants, here in the village of Cara. His father tended to crops, while his mother cared for the family. The border city of Danustica lied a short distance west. The population there depended on the grain that Cara provided. This ensured the village was well protected, and despite the hard life of farm labor, the times were peaceful. But fate would have its say. Flavius's uncle, Justin, had left behind the life of a farmer and joined the Imperial Legion. With his talent and charm, he quickly rose through the ranks. He became head of the Imperial Guard, and this was an honored position. For Danustica lay on the eastern frontier, where it served to deter the Khazate and Aserai from invading Empire lands. Unlike the troops stationed within the heartland, who spent their days in formations and parades, the soldiers sent here earned their pay. Justin summoned Flavius to the city and became the boy's sponsor. He was educated in all manner of subjects, from philosophy, music, mathematics, politics, and law. And young Flavius was a bright pupil. When not busy with his studies, he was trained for war. Justin had his best cataphracts teach Flavius the horse and the lance. Times had changed since squares of legionnaires could easily trample the enemies of the empire. Aserai javelins and Khazate horse archers had revealed the folly of the empire's dependence on its elite infantry. Now, the heavily armored cataphract was depended on to carry the battlefield. The empire was fortunate, for fertile plains extended from Danustica to Epircotia, all the way west to Ortizia. There was no shortage of good land to raise both horses and men into elite cataphracts. In times of private instruction, Uncle Justin always emphasized the importance of cavalry tactics. And as a way to honor his uncle and show his gratitude, Flavius took the name Justinian. He was still just a boy when the Emperor Nuretzes summoned a great imperial army to head north and crush the barbarians. He remembered how the city was set abuzz with an air of excitement. He also remembered the great sadness that followed when imperial messengers arrived with news. The army had been slaughtered, the emperor had been killed, along with Uncle Justin. In a moment, Justinian's promising future had faded. He moved back to Cara with his family, but the village life did not suit him. Following the emperor's death, the empire had divided, and civil war raged throughout the land. The outermost settlements were left to fend for themselves. Looters and bandits sprung up everywhere, and the peaceful village of Cara was no longer safe. It was in these dangerous times that Justinian began his path to glory. It was difficult at first to convince men who had no idea who he was to join him. But times were hard, and there were always a few desperate for coin. Justinian was not rich. He used his savings to enlist a small group of men to hunt down the brigands who preyed upon the citizenry. The Green War Band, led by the brilliance of Justinian, found quick success. Small victory after small victory, they became stronger. From the village to the markets of the city, the thankful citizens, for years abandoned, sang the praises of Justinian and the peace he and his men had brought to the region. His force grew larger, and his fame spread. His ambition had also grown. He knew he would need more coin if he was to build the professional army his dreams required. An opportunity came from the west. Garios, leader of the Western Empire, was in a desperate war with the Valandians and the Aserai, both of whom sought to conquer the rich city of Ortizia. Justinian headed west with his war band and signed up. What followed was a whirlwind of recruiting, training, and action. Justinian also found companions to help him. An old legionnaire to train the infantry, a Valandian huntress to train the archers and scouts. Background did not matter. Talent was all. It was on a coastal patrol that his scouts first spotted the large Aserai army that had poured out of the desert. He moved his men inside the walls and made ready the defenses. It did not take long for the Aserai to attack. And though they were fierce and determined, it was not enough. The walls held, and the attackers were broken. A pile of loot, horses, and men were left behind, and Justinian claimed it all. It was Aseron, leader of the Northern Empire, whose father had recently died, who first reached out to the savior of Ortizia. The Valandians saw the death of Lucan as an opportunity to strike, and brought a massive army to take the castle Mekalovia and then the town of Epicotia. The North had summoned its legions to meet the Valandians in the field, but the young leader was concerned, for he knew how dangerous the Knights of Valandia could be on open ground. He wished to enlist Justinian's elite cataphracts to help with the battle to come. All he need do was name his price. But Justinian was already wealthy. What he needed now was power. Justinian agreed to assist in crushing the Valandian threat in exchange for becoming a noble of the North. The deal was struck, and the deed was done. The Valandian barons were routed. And after the battle, Clan Sabatius was born. To further legitimize his position, Justinian married the youngest daughter of the Petros clan, whose matriarch, Regaia, claimed to be the rightful monarch of the empire. A brief period of peace followed. But then, as always, war once again erupted throughout the land. Regaia, emboldened by the capture of Mysia, now laid siege to Saniopa. Malaceron gathered his forces in the north. To relieve the siege, he tasked Justinian to gather another army and attack southern empire lands. Justinian was up to the task. He knew, even as a boy, the legions would pull troops from the garrisons on the border to bolster their forces. And so there he struck. First, Danustica, then Onira. The castles Corinia and Odrissa were taken as well. Asaron, however, had less success. Unable to relieve the siege, the city of Seniopa had fallen to Regea. She then turned her armies east to retake the lost territory. They did not believe all of the stories of Justinian's brilliance or his army's prowess. But soon, they learned to. Regea and the nobles of the Southern Empire were forced to sue for peace. Asaron was happy to grant the frontier fiefs to Clan Sabatius. The truth was, very few nobles were interested in being on the borders surrounded by enemies. But Justinian could see their worth. He envisioned Danustica and Onira would become gateways to the east and south. All trade coming to the empire would pass through here. The fertile farms and villages would provide food and men. There was only one major concern: the Khazate. The Khan Manchug and his steppe hordes had begun conquering more and more land to the west, and nothing was stopping them. It would not be long before they came to take Justinian's lands too. He remembered how his uncle had warned of the Khazate horse archers, how even the cataphracts had struggled mightily against them. But he also knew every empire had its dissidents. He sent diplomats loaded with gold out into the steppes to find them. A man called Tabor, the Gray Falcon, was brought to him. According to Tabor, Manchug had persecuted his clan of nomads since coming to power, and so the agreement was simple. His clan would receive equipment and protection in exchange for their military service. Tabor accepted and seemed to relish the idea of revenge. The army was trained, the garrisons filled, and the walls fortified. Then they waited for the Khazate to come. A messenger arrived from Asaron. The Valandians and Battanians were on the warpath again. Justinian and his men were to head north to join the army. But Justinian knew to do so would leave his territory completely vulnerable. But he also knew Asaron would not care, for he was blinded trying to live up to his father's legacy. As it tends to, the distance from the north had created a detachment. The citizens of the frontier never saw Asaron or any other northern nobles. They knew only Justinian. And so, out of duty to his men, his people, his kingdom, the Byzantine Empire was born. The news spread like wildfire. No doubt Asaron wished to punish the insurrection, but he was too occupied in the north to do so. Regea, however, still furious after the loss of so much of her kingdom, summoned the full strength of the Southern Empire to crush the new kingdom and its boy king. She marched out and laid siege to Onira. But Justinian was ready, and the plains turned red as the Southern Empire Legion were introduced to the Byzantine way of war. The cataphracts crashed into and through their lines as the horse archers shot death from every angle. The men who made it across the field, already overwhelmed and shocked, could not hold up for long to the infantry and archers who waited for them. It was a massacre. The Khan must have assumed that the Byzantine army would either be destroyed or too damaged to fight, for he sent a horde of barbarians to take Odrissa Castle. But Justinian was quick to respond, and soon the battlefield was set. As was foretold by his uncle, the Khazate began the battle by sending their horse archers out to pepper the Byzantine army, ride around them, and encircle them. Anticipating this maneuver, Justinian placed his archers to the flank. Behind them, he placed the Grey Falcon and his horse archers. As the Khazate horde approached, the sky filled with arrows, and it became clear that the Khazate horse archers were not prepared for the storm of death that awaited them. Panic spread throughout the Khazate lines. The entire army lost cohesion and began to charge. And the Byzantine forces waited to receive them. The Khazate army was utterly destroyed. With his enemies routed, Justinian planned his next steps. He would unite the empire, and then all of Calradia would be his. For this was the will of Justinian the Great. Behold the rise of the Byzantine Empire. Oklahoma out.